This is the second part of part 3, charms. The yes set charm. The yes set charm is a variation of the tick the box charm. It involves getting you to say yes to a series of questions and then springing the critical question which the other wants you to agree to, such as, so your full name is so-and-so? Yes. And you live at such and such? Yes. And you need a car to get to work? Yes. And you want to buy this car today? The counter charm. Be ready for the last question and say no, or set out your requirements before you would go ahead with the purchase. The yes or no charm. This involves forcing you to say yes or no to each question. For example, do you want this car? Yes or no? In the real world, decisions normally cannot be answered by a simple yes or no. How much does the car cost to buy? How much does it cost to run? How much does it cost to insure? How much does it cost to repair? Are parts available? What is the fuel consumption? What other cars are on the market? And so on and so on. The counter charm. One counter charm is to answer, not until I'm satisfied it's the best buy for me, and then go on to discuss the detail. The onus charm. I was in a car showroom looking for a car to buy, and the salesman, after I had expressed interest in a car, applied the onus charm by asking, is there any reason why you should not proceed with the purchase of the car today? That was a cheeky question, straight out of a sales training handbook. What this charm does is to reverse the onus. Instead of the salesman having to convince me to buy the car, I have to convince him why I should not. Now, as it happened, I liked the car and the deal, and so I answered, no, there isn't, and went on to buy the car. I fancy he was a little surprised. Note that I was not offended. It was his job to sell me the car, and he was just doing his best. Counter charm. You can deflect this by saying you wish to consider alternatives, seek higher authority, etc. You do not want to succumb to the charm by trying to list the reasons why you are not buying the car, because that confines your area of manoeuvre, and, mixing my metaphors, you do not want to paint yourself into a corner. The focusing charm. This involves getting you to focus on the detail and gloss over the important. Say you're buying a car. The salesperson will spend a lot of time on the benefits of the car, explaining the radio, the Bluetooth, the GPS, and so on. Now this does two things. It's part of the feet freeze charm, because the salesperson is investing a lot of time in you, and you feel obligated to buy the car. And to be sure, there is detail you are interested in. What the salesman will not do is focus on the big issue, which is normally the price. The price will either be on a brochure, which you have been given, or the salesman will introduce it almost casually at the end of the presentation. $21,000 will be described as 21 or 20.9 or broken down, e.g. $400 a month. Words like dollars and thousand will be avoided. Counter charm. Ask the price and keep asking. As things are increasingly being sold over the internet, the practice is growing of not informing you of the price until you have provided a whole lot of information and invested your valuable time doing it. Theatre tickets are a case in point. When the selling process is automated, there's not much you can do about it, other than walk away. Choice of alternatives charm. The choice of alternatives charm involves the salesperson giving you a choice of two alternatives, both alternatives assuming you will go ahead with the purchase. For example, do you want the pearl paint finish, or will you take the car with the deluxe gloss finish? The assumption, of course, is that you're going to proceed with the purchase. The counter charm, of course, is to make it clear you have not yet decided to go ahead with the purchase. For example, you could say, if I were to proceed with the purchase, I would like. The set-aside charm. The focusing charm seeks to focus attention away from a critical issue. Using the set-aside charm, the other acknowledges the issue but seeks to set it aside to be dealt with later. Later, the other can try and treat it as assumed, imply that it had been tacitly agreed to, or argue that it had been outweighed by the benefits the other had been focusing on. The counter charm for the set-aside charm and also the focusing charm is to nail the critical issue down, such as by saying up front, now we both understand the car will not cost more than $20,000. Or you could try a little humour and, when the salesperson points out some feature, comment, well, one would expect that on a $20,000 car. Counter charm. Another counter charm is the deal breaker charm. You simply say, well, that is a deal breaker. This lets the other know that unless that term is accepted, you walk away. It forces the other to address the issue. The assumptive charm. Using the assumptive charm, the other will implicitly make assumptions, such as that you have enough money for the purchase, you cannot pay too much for quality, that you are going to close the deal today, that you will not walk away without having made the purchase, that everyone else would do what you're doing, that everyone else expects you to have this item. This item will make you successful, envied, and so on. Also, details can be slipped in, such as the good fuel economy of the car, the high quality colour rendition of the TV, and so on. This can be very effective against you because if the other goes on with these assumptions, you can, if you're not prepared, become too embarrassed to challenge any of the assumptions, and you become very vulnerable. There's a chance also the other is using, consciously or unconsciously, some level of enchantment, such as a confusional enchantment. The counter charm here. The assumptive charm can be very effective. Higher authority is probably the best counter charm here, but be careful the salesman does not close the gate on you by asking a question such as, and is there anyone you need to speak to if you were to enter into an agreement? If you are asked that question, you should immediately be on your guard because the salesperson knows what he or she is doing, and the salesperson is painting you into a corner. Counter charm. Another counter charm is to acknowledge the salesperson is making these statements without necessarily you accepting them. A useful phrase here is, I hear what you're saying, or I note what you're saying. Ultimately, you may have to look at your watch, use the, oh, look at the time charm, and head quickly for the door, as Kenny Rogers sings, Know When to Run. The repetition charm. The other might keep repeating something. Have you noticed the advertisements on TV? The same advertisement might be shown 4 times in the 1 hour. Apart from drumming it into your mind and helping push it into your unconscious without it being vetted by the conscious mind, conscious repetition makes it embarrassing for you to raise at a later time. A useful point to remember is that the matter the salesperson keeps repeating may be the very thing he fears will stop you buying. Counter charm. Just go ahead and raise the matter as though the salesperson had not been repeating it. The salesperson, if he's got any brains, does not want to embarrass you, or rather, he or she does not want to embarrass you to the point where you feel offended and can walk away. The opposite of the repetition charm is the silence charm. You might raise some technical objection and the other will simply give no answer. or give some non-committal reply such as, "I never heard that." Counter-charm. Apply what is known as magistrates' court rules. That is, if you don't deny something, you admit it. You can say something like, "There's no smoke without fire, though." This sort of thing forces the salesman to address the matter. If it's critical, you may want to use the deal-breaker counter-charm. Supersizing and nibbling charms. With the supersizing charm, the other tries to get you to buy more than you want. The maxi burger is only $1 extra. With the nibbling charm, the other, having sold you the goods or services, tries to add additional things. And will you have fries with that? On a larger scale, you buy a car, and once the deal is done, you're referred to an aftercare salesperson, the nibbler, who tries to sell you some paint preservation scheme. Or you purchase a TV and you're offered an extended warranty at an additional cost. Counter-charm. Supersizing. Buy a smaller portion if that's what you want. Nibbling. Make a decision. The additional offer might be attractive or not. If you can find out you are going to be nibbled, and you think the nibble items should be included in the main deal, you should try and get the additional things added up front at no additional cost. Dark patterns. These are used on websites to get you to choose the way the website wants and discourage you from choosing, for example, not to buy a product. The preferred choice is normally in a large coloured box, and the alternative choice is in a pale or small text, often with some message such as, "No, I do not want to save money." Or the preferred choice selection box is green and the non-preferred box red. Another dark pattern is to have only one choice and a small X to close the screen. Sometimes the small X is in a colour hard to distinguish from the background colour. Counter-charm. If you cannot find the button indicating you do not want to buy the product, you may be able to simply close down the page. It's a good idea to ensure you always have to enter a password or bank details in order to make a payment. VAC or VAK profiling. Many salespersons are taught the basic neuro-linguistic programming technique of visual, auditory, kinesthetic profiling. Basically, you take in information in three ways: through your eyes, visual, through your ears, auditory, and through your feelings, kinesthetic. Thus, if you're buying a car, you will evaluate the car using all your senses. You will look at its shape and colour, you will listen to the salesperson talking about the car, and listen to the radio, and you will open and close the doors and sit in the car and feel the steering wheel. Although you take in and process information using all three senses, you tend to favour one sense. This is called your primary sense. Thus, if you favour visual information, you're called a visual. If you favour sound and language, you are called an auditory. And if you favour touch and feelings, you are called a kinesthetic. Clues to your primary sense are contained in your language. If you say, "I want to see that blue car you have in the window," the salesperson might form the view you are probably a visual. He will thus focus his selling on how the cars look, colours and style. If you say, "Can you tell me what cars you have?" he will focus on his voice, play the sound system, explain things in detail, and maybe show how quiet and positive the door of the car closes. If you say, "My neighbour has a car like this and he's very pleased with it," the salesperson might assume you are probably a kinesthetic, and he might focus on how reliable the car is, how pleased your family would be if you bought the car, and show you testimonials from others. As for the counter-charm, just be aware of this. This is really just good sales technique. Make sure, though, that you use all your senses in the negotiation. Evaluate the product, on all its qualities, not just on how it looks or sounds, or whether the neighbours will like it. And that ends the part on charms. Conclusion. These then are the dark arts: enchantment, potions and charms. I'm not going to repeat what I've already said. I only want to say one more thing, and that is, if you are feeling overwhelmed or unable to cope or unhappy, or that life is not worth living, seek help. It's amazing how, when you're in a situation where you are very unhappy and you feel there's no way out, a friend or therapist can look at your situation and say, well, you could do this or this or this. And these are all things you have just not been able to see. If you have phobias, depression, lack of confidence, anxiety, addictions, stress, feeling-related weight issues and things like that, my recommendation is to see a hypnotherapist. But you may also well need to see others who can help you get your real life world back into control. Specialists such as a financial counsellor, a careers counsellor, a relationships counsellor, a life coach, a fitness instructor, a dietitian, a beautician or a medical doctor, depending on your particular situation. It's no good getting some hypnotherapist to give you feel-good suggestions if your conscious mind knows that your real world life is unsatisfactory. The human mind is nobody's fool. Your unconscious will soon work out it has been duped and take action in some form, such as anger or depression. You must keep your conscious and unconscious minds in balance. If you do not feel your issues are being resolved with one practitioner, try another, though bear in mind, ultimately, your healing must come from within. If you're still at school, the school may have resources which you can access. Always remember there is help out there if you need it. Understand you're very special. This sounds twee, but what I mean is your mind is the most complex and advanced organism in the universe, as far as we know, and the culmination of eons of evolution. It will serve you well, but do take good care of it. Do not think everything you need to know about the dark arts is in this handbook. God forbid. I have attempted to distill my knowledge of the real-world dark arts in this handbook, but there are many others wiser than me or with more specialised knowledge who you can and should learn from. I urge you to learn all you can. With the very best wishes for the rest of your life, and protect yourself against the dark arts. Tim Faulkner, hypnotherapist.